The following brought to you by the National Cannabis Industries Association.
My name is Calico Castile. I'm the Director of Marketing here at the National Cannabis Industry Association. We'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight to our Cannabis Caucus. This is one of our event series that we like to put on for our members as we go around the country. It gives us an opportunity to hear from our members about what's going on the ground in your markets and in your regions. It also gives us an opportunity to be able to share with you guys the hard work that our dedicated government relations staff is doing on Capitol Hill every day. So that's what brings us out to Portland today here at Lola's Room. NCIA, we are the longest and oldest running trade association. We represent about 2,000 member businesses across the country. That's direct-to-plant licensed businesses as well as ancillary products and services. So if you're in the industry in any way or touching or want to get in the industry, getting involved in NCIA is not only a great way for your voice to be heard at the federal level in Washington, D.C., it's also a really great way to make connections with your fellow entrepreneurs here in the industry and get yourself informed and up to date on other educational trends in the industry. So we appreciate everybody coming out tonight. As I said, our mission is to promote the growth of a responsible and legitimate cannabis industry and work for the favorable social, economic, and legal environment for that industry in the United States. And that's why we get up every morning here at NCIA. And I do want to take a second to thank our silver sponsor for tonight, Greenlight Law Group. Thank you so much. Just give them a round of applause. That wouldn't be possible without them contributing to the cause here, allowing us to have this awesome space, some food and drinks as well. I'd also like to thank our bronze sponsor who's not here on site tonight, Cannabis BPO. They are kind of a call center sort of operation where if you guys have a sales team or want to outsource some of your sales stuff or have some sort of like just phone operation sort of things, Cannabis BPO is a really great person. They actually do a lot of our direct outreach to our members for these events to make sure that all of our members know that they can take advantage of their memberships by coming to the event. So thank you so much to Greenlight Law and Cannabis BPO. We appreciate you guys. This evening we're really excited and we're very lucky to have Representative Ken Helm, representative from Beaverton, here today to talk to us a little bit about things that have been going on in Salem at the state legislature and some of the work that he's been doing here in the state of Oregon for the cannabis industry. So let's give a good warm welcome and a round of applause for Representative Ken Helm.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is an interesting night in Oregon politics because March 10th is the date that every pre-election the candidates for office have to file or not be eligible. So across the state tonight, candidates for all offices in Oregon have either filed or not, and I filed again, and I'll be running for my fourth full cycle. That means that I first ran in 2014, and on this night, 6 years ago, I came in sideways on the Oregon process and started my way toward the position that I now hold. And as you probably remember, 2014 was a really big year for cannabis in Oregon. We passed Measure 91, and that legalized adult use recreational cannabis in the state and opened up the possibility for a whole new industry here. And we've been working ever since to try to build that industry. There weren't a ton of legislators right out of the box that wanted to work on cannabis in the legislature in 2015 when I entered. But I did. I thought this was going to be a landmark piece of legislation for the state, and we needed to take the ballot measure and adapt it to all Oregon laws, normalize it, make it work. And a unique committee was developed at that time that was bicameral and bipartisan. And of course it was called the Joint Committee, and that is a very old and dead pun at this point. But the cool thing about the committee is we did a lot of really fantastic work for 2015, 2016, and 2017 that set the table for the cannabis industry in Oregon. And you maybe don't remember and might be surprised to know that through those 3 legislative sessions, the bills that that committee produced and sent to our respective House and Senate floors passed almost unanimously, every one. Cannabis in Oregon is not a partisan issue. It's not a Senate House issue. It's just an Oregon issue until recently. And I was really proud to be on the committee that did all that work. In 2017, the committee was dissolved with our leaders, I think, probably rightly at the time, thinking that we've had this specialized committee and now we can just move cannabis into the ordinary business industry. And issues that come up in the cannabis industry will filter into different committees that do that type of work. And I still serve on one of those committees in the House Economic Development and Trade Committee. But it hasn't ended up being the case. Surprisingly enough, cannabis is still an issue and an industry that needs a special touch. And I continue to try to educate my colleagues all the time on what a unique opportunity we still have and how far we have come. We really have. I mean, those of you who have been in this from the beginning, we started out in the wilderness, and now we have an industry that is respected, that has conformed to regulation largely, and has developed all sorts of articulations that a lot of other nascent industries have gone through over time. And that is a really, really positive thing. We've done so well, in fact, that we've overproduced a little bit. I'm skeptical about the numbers, actually. But I know that we still have a reputation worldwide as the place where some of the best cannabis in the world is grown, and that people care. That people care about what they're doing, that they care about their strains, they care about their product, they care about the people that they're selling to. So we've got that going for us. That gets us up to present day, where as a kind of maturing industry, really, we face new challenges and new opportunities. In this state, we are still trying to accommodate the integration of our medical system with our adult use recreational system. And that's tough. I know that probably you've all touched that in one way or another. Over time, we are going to have to take care of the folks that really need what they view as medicine and do it in a way that's humane and thoughtful. We're not done with that work yet. That's something that still needs to be done. At the same time, the industry is taken off like every other, right? We've got big players. We've got big players that have come into the state that have plenty of money, and they are ready to do to cannabis what we've done to every other industry in America, which is to normalize it. Make it profitable. Make it conform to accounting principles and business laws. And that's happening. And as that happens, we are able to look beyond what we have now. And what we're looking toward beyond what we have now is interstate commerce, right? That's the next horizon. That is something that will solve a lot of problems for Oregon, in that Oregon's really good at producing cannabis. We've got a lot of super good people that are really good at their jobs. And both indoor and outdoor growing produces a lot of product that people want around the world. And people actually want just outside of our state lines. And so we've been working on how to set the table for interstate commerce with states that are adjoining Oregon for a couple of years. And getting, yeah, that's a very good thing. We're ready. We empowered, as a legislature, we empowered the governor to enter into agreements with the governors of other states adjoining Oregon to have cannabis move across borders legally as soon as the federal government sort of paves the way. And that doesn't have to be federal law. It could be an understanding in the same way that we operated under the Cole Memo for several years. We just need a federal administration that is willing to do that and thoughtful about doing it. So that's not impossible and is not that far in the future. And if we do so, there are, as you know, markets that are ready for our product, that are ready to take up and make business arrangements with us, willing to do the hard work to make sure that the regulatory regimes are aligned, and that in doing so it doesn't endanger folks that are putting their own private money at risk in trying to expand the market. So that's where we are. As you probably know, Oregon just finished up its most devastating failure of a political session in history. The 2020 short session ended officially on Sunday, but actually about 2 o'clock on Thursday of last week, passing 3 bills. 3.
Yay!
Yeah, there were a couple good ones, but we have at this point in time sort of a dysfunctional system in that we have folks that are willing to walk out on democracy in order to protest what they don't like, and that needs fixing. And unfortunately, a handful of bills related to the cannabis industry were involved with that. One of them proposed that we consolidate some of our regulations around both adult use and medical systems in the state. Another of them that didn't make it proposed that we get ready for a third-party certification system that would show that Oregon cannabis production is the most sustainable in the country, if not the world, from both an electricity conservation point of view, water point of view, and pesticide point of view. Those all fell by the wayside. So those need to come back, and those are something that we'll be working on as we go to 2021. But thank you for being here, thank you for persevering, and thank you for being part of this process for so many years. I continue to be involved, even though I'm one of only 2 legislators that were on that original committee. I continue to be enthusiastic about your industry. I continue to be supportive because I know all the hard work that you've put in, and I know what we're capable of, and I know what it means economically to this state when you're a success. When you're a success, we get tax revenues that pay for all sorts of things and furthers your own industry. So know that you have a friend in me as we move forward, and I support your efforts. Congratulations.
So much appreciated. Thank you so much, Representative Helm. We appreciate you being here today and for all your leadership, especially working on that interstate commerce bill, which is going to be a big thing for the industry as we continue to move forward. Going ahead and moving this presentation along a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and bring up our Executive Director, Aaron Smith. He started this organization 10 years ago. It's our 10-year anniversary this year when he was just knocking on doors himself, getting dispensaries to sign up and buy into this larger vision of a well-regulated and a responsible industry. And 10 years later, here we are finally seeing some progress at the federal level, and Aaron's going to go ahead and give you guys a little bit of an update of what we've been working on.
Thank you, Felico. 10 years. Wow. Thank you, Representative Helm. That was it's always great to hear from the legislators on the ground here, really making a difference. And we couldn't do this kind of work if not for the elected officials that are carrying the message of the industry forward. And from NCIA, of course, works at the federal level because so many of the problems, including the lack of access to interstate markets, exist because of federal prohibition. And it's easy to forget when we're in a little bubble here in Oregon or in California, where I'm from, and other great places in the country that have departed from prohibition, that we still have a federal government that treats cannabis like it's a Schedule I substance, and you should be locked up behind bars for it, even if you do have a state license hanging on your wall. So NCIA's primary mission, when we set out to start the organization 10 years ago, was to make sure that this industry, as nascent as it was then, and honestly still is by in relative terms, to make sure that that industry has a seat at the table, lobbying Congress, working with the executive branch and the administration to educate lawmakers on what it means to be a legal cannabis industry, how the legal industry can successfully replace prohibition in criminal markets and bring about thriving small business sector in this country. So that means we, while there are other great groups that we work with hand in hand, day after day, we really are uniquely positioned to represent the broader industry, and as such, we work on those issues that affect you guys as operators in the industry on a day-to-day. That's from working on FDA rulemaking around CBD and hemp, that right now is a hot topic, to opening up access to the financial services, fixing the outdated banking regulations, amending Section 280E, which is the still a really uphill battle in DC, and most members of Congress don't know what 280E is, but I hope you do. Which is because I think something that's really holding us back as well, and also just the broadly ending prohibition and making sure that our businesses are treated fairly under federal law. Over the last year in 2019, the banking issue really received the most support in Congress and really saw more momentum around this issue than anything else. That's because it's politically pretty safe to say that, well, for a Republican member of Congress who might represent a state that doesn't yet have a real cannabis industry, it's very easy. It's relatively easier for them to say, well, I don't support legalization, but I think that these businesses should have access to banking services, especially when we have law enforcement coming out in support of similar policies, and finally last year, the banking industry itself coming out and joining the cannabis industry and pushing for these changes. So the Safe Banking Act, which is a very incremental piece of legislation that only addresses the financial services issues, but NCIA has been working on since 2011 and actually named this bill, finally passed one chamber of the House, 321 to 103 last year. And this is at a time, this vote was actually taken just hours after Speaker Pelosi announced the impeachment proceedings were going to be underway. This is at a time when Congress has never really been as divided along partisan lines, and they still be able to come together. We had almost 100 Republicans support this bill. So the bill is now, of course, moved to the Senate, where there's a bigger uphill battle, given that the Senate is controlled by Mitch McConnell and Republicans, who, while it's less of an issue that this is a cannabis issue, like I said, the banking issue is less controversial. Right now, what's controversial in the Senate is passing anything that came out of a democratically controlled House. So the partisan rancor may get in the way, but I actually think that we do have a shot at getting Safe Banking Act passed through the Senate. We're asking for the version that passed in the House with such a strong bipartisan majority also be passed an identical version in the Senate. That's likely not to happen, but that's what we're asking for. Chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, Mike Crapo from Idaho, one of the 3 states that doesn't have a marijuana program on the books yet until after November, came out with 8 or 9 different points that he expressed concerns about the bill and came out with 8 or 9 different suggested amendments for the bill that he might look to push forward, ask for public comment. Of those, the list of amendments, only one of them is really a poison pill and would render the bill completely useless, in my opinion, and that would be a 2% THC cap. So saying that somehow the banks would have to make sure that these companies that they had accounts with those banks didn't make products that were under 2%. It wasn't really well thought out. It was just that this is a bullet point in a list of a few. Probably be good for edibles companies maybe that might have 2% of the whole product. Doesn't make sense for really the industry. NCIA, not only NCIA of course opposed that, but we organized a coalition of other industry associations throughout the country. So we had almost 40 cannabis industry associations sign on to a bill saying that that's the poison pill. We'll work with you on any other issue, but not that. And then also we circulated a letter of support or of opposition to that within the industry that garnered almost 4,000 signatures from individual cannabis entrepreneurs and business owners within our membership. I think that I'm cautiously optimistic that this could move forward, and it's probably maybe the only things that might move out of the Senate between now and the election in November. Every day that goes by, it's one less opportunity. But I think because this is Colorado Senator Cory Gardner's bill, there is some political will on the Republican side. He's one of the more vulnerable Republicans in the Senate. This is a win. This would be a win for him. We have a possibility of getting it moved without that 2% cap. But even if it does move, because I will guarantee that if this moves out of the Senate, it won't look exactly the same as the House bill. They're not going to pass a Democratic bill. But if we can get 6, 7 of the Crapo amendments included, that'll give him a victory. As long as that 2% cap isn't there, then I think we're going to be fine as an industry. The other amendments he's suggesting are things that we can all live with. Things like making funds available to study the harms associated with cannabis, or making sure that banks aren't giving accounts to businesses that are diverting out of state, etc. Even if a bad bill passes out of the Senate, there's still an opportunity in the conference committee to work out the differences between the two bills, and given the bipartisan support in the House, I think it has a really good shot. Another piece of legislation we're really excited about is the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, the MORE Act. So there are more legalization bills pending in Congress right now than probably ever before, and certainly more than anyone can keep track of. There are a couple that have real traction, and I think the MORE Act, at least on the House side, has the most traction because its primary author on the House side is the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, which is the primary committee of jurisdiction. It addresses so many of the issues around marijuana prohibition in a comprehensive way, more than just deferring to state law. It actually works to end marijuana prohibition once and for all at the federal level, deschedule cannabis, and then begin to address a lot of the social justice issues and the harms caused by prohibition over the last 8 decades. The MORE Act is not perfect, though. It's not. There's of the 20 or so bills that are out there addressing legalization, none of them are perfect. The MORE Act does not include any provisions for how cannabis would be regulated. The production and sale of cannabis would be regulated at the federal level. But the good news is that the authors are open to amendments, and we're working with those offices to suggest a regulatory framework that should be attached to the MORE Act should this come up for an opportunity for amendments and votes, which I think it actually will on the House side later on this year, probably in the spring. So you guys are lucky. This is our kind of call to action around banking. You guys are really lucky to have Jeff Merkley and Ron Wyden as your 2 U.S. senators. If you want to take a moment this week to contact both of your senators' offices and just thank them for being a champion on cannabis issues, and not just thank them, ask them how you can help as a constituent, because these guys are they're dealing with a million different issues and lots of priorities for the state of Oregon, for their constituents here, and of course at the national level. And the fact that they've prioritized cannabis in the way that they have is unusual for even senators that represent states that do have cannabis industries. Like Dianne Feinstein's my senator, and Kalika's senator, and we know you can't just rely on having a state that supports cannabis and then rely on your elected officials to follow suit. These guys do. So please do take some time to support in one way or the other, and also ask for how you can help them. And all this information about your senators and members of the House is on our website. Another really exciting thing that I'm proud of that NCI has been working on over the last few years, but have really ramped up efforts on in the last year, is our Policy Council. The Policy Council is a division within NCIA that works to develop kind of the long-term thinking of what cannabis regulation should look like at the federal level after we end prohibition. We spend so much time working on the incremental things like let's get banking, let's fix 280E, and etc. But we're getting so close to those issues being resolved that now we've really turned our sights on becoming what I think is truly the cannabis industry's only real think tank, policy think tank, that puts together, we've put together a great group of not just industry professionals and policy leaders from within the industry, but also outside the industry to advise us on how cannabis should look at the federal level from a regulatory perspective. Last year, we published, I think, the most comprehensive publication we've ever done, which is a 4-track plan for how to regulate all cannabis products, from low THC hemp-related products to adult use cannabis and everything in between. And we also have put out, we also just recently put out a publication on safe vaping, which is, really was more of an opportunity for us to point out that state regulations and high state taxes and high barriers to entry to the regulated market have caused one of the problems with that is it's caused this opportunity for the criminal market to provide sometimes unsafe products. And so that's really getting a lot of traction. And I want to encourage everybody here to get more involved if you're already a member of NCIA and you want to know how to get involved with Policy Council, talk to me or Kalika or Brian here, and we'll give you more information on that. In the coming days, we have more white papers up between now and the next 6 months on environmental sustainability, intellectual property protections, and appellation of origin for cannabis, as well as interstate commerce, which the representative just talked about, I think is probably truly the biggest barrier to Oregon becoming the leader that it really should be in the national market, is the ability to access interstate markets. We're working with the Craft Cannabis Alliance and Adam Smith, who's been doing an excellent job crisscrossing the country, supporting this effort, because part of while Oregon has already of course passed its own version of an interstate commerce bill, but it takes at least 2 states. And I think NCIA's role is to try to help amplify this message into states that would be import states. And so we're shopping this on the East Coast and states, state legislative. There's states out there that are like, well, we don't have enough cannabis in our state. And then there's Oregon. So also just want to really encourage all of you to get more involved with NCIA. And primarily in the coming 2 months, or in a couple months from now, we have our 10th annual Cannabis Industry Lobby Days. This is an opportunity to come to DC, meet with members of Congress, not just from Oregon, because like I said, you have six or seven members of Congress that represent this state, and they're all really good, even the one Republican. But there are 500 plus others that need to hear from you, and many of them are either represent states that don't have a cannabis industry, haven't met anyone in the cannabis industry, or they have staffers that are always rotating in and out of these offices that have never really met anyone in the cannabis industry. And it's so important that while we're there every day, kind of talking, we're there every day talking about these issues on your behalf, it's so important that at least one time a year, and really more, that members of Congress get an opportunity to sit down and meet with you guys face to face. So I want to ask that you come out and join us for Lobby Days, May 19th through 21st. The cost is low at $100 right now to register. And that includes also our closing celebration, which used to be a separately ticketed event. We're now opening that to everybody. And then also just to encourage like some buzz around Lobby Days and to get you guys engaged. We have some fun little stickers that Coleco has. I think if you come back to our table and meet with Coleco and RSVP for the events, we'll give you a sticker and take a picture of you and put you on social media and all that good stuff. But really want to get the biggest contingency from the West Coast ever, given that there's just so much happening out here. And this will be, by then, this will be the opportunity to really talk about the need for interstate commerce as well. Part of Lobby Days this time is we also have a VIP day, which is the preceding day, the May 19th. If you're a member of our PAC Leadership Circle, which is you need donors to our PAC of $1,000 and up, or if you are a member of our Policy Council, then you get an opportunity to attend VIP days, and feel free to ask me about that after. And here we go. We have a video for like a minute or two here I'm going to play for you guys. We have a new Congress here in DC, and it was really important to get as many members of NCIA out to educate new members of Congress on the issues surrounding the cannabis industry, like banking and the lack of safe access to banking, 280E and the tax issues, as well as just broader need for reform and social equity within the industry. And one way that I think really demonstrates the leadership that NCIA has here on Capitol Hill and the way that we've moved the dial in Congress is that between all of the events at Lobby Days, over 20 members of Congress showed up to speak and attend and mingle with our members. We had a briefing on the banking issue, which was kicked off by Congressman Ed Perlmutter, who is one of the lead authors of the Safe Banking Act, as well as panelists including a lobbyist with the American Banking Association and our own Michelle Rudder in the Washington, D.C. office here at NCIA. We also hosted a VIP luncheon for the first time, featuring several members of Congress for our PAC donors for the first time ever, and I think that's going to be a tradition going forward as an opportunity for members of NCIA that support the PAC, which ultimately supports members of Congress who support the cannabis industry. In conjunction with our partner, the Minority Cannabis Business Association, we hosted a briefing on diversity and equity in the cannabis industry, which was attended by at least 3 members of Congress, many staff members from across the Hill, as well as, of course, members of NCIA. I know that being in the cannabis industry is not easy, and I am so proud and also grateful for the members of NCIA that took the time out of their busy lives to fly, in some cases, all the way across the country to join us and help us educate and build support for the issues that are so important for our industry's survival. All right. Has anyone here ever attended Lobby Days? All right. A few in the room. If you're of the majority that hasn't, seek out these folks or us, and we will tell you how. It's not. This is also, there's also a self-interest here. Like, it's not just great for the movement and the cause, but I will guarantee that if you attend Lobby Days, you will get the opportunity to not only meet with the higher echelon of NCIA's membership and therefore the industry, but also just in a really kind of enriching experience, working with your colleagues across meetings on the Hill over 2 days. It's not like just going to a conference or many of the events that we're used to doing. It's something very different. And NCIA does it differently. If you've been on Lobby Days with usually you get your 2 senators and your 1 House your House member, and you go and you meet, you take 3 meetings, and then you go to an evening fundraiser or something at the end of the day. We keep you much busier than that. We set up meetings with members of Congress from states that have never, that haven't really looked at cannabis yet, and make it really interesting. Also, it's only $100, like I said, but that number is going to go up in a few weeks. Because we really want to encourage we have a discounted early rate. We really need to encourage early registration because as soon as you register, we also start communicating with you about who you're meeting with, and we start matching you up with teammates and meetings on the Hill, so register early. And finally, it is really exciting that we're taking our 7th Annual Cannabis Business Summit and Expo, our largest national event, to San Francisco for our 10th anniversary. We will be at the Moscone Center June 15th and 17th. We just opened up registration for that. Also early bird registration, so there's a good discount if you register now. We're going to be doing, there's a lot of some things that I'm able to talk about, some things I'm not able to talk about, but a lot of special surprises and kind of an enhanced experience that we've moved it to San Francisco, including our 10th anniversary, the return of the Cannabis Carnival celebration that we're really looking forward to. Talk to any of us here, register at the table back there, or visit our website, thecannabisindustry.org, and get involved.
Aaron, question?
Yes.
So, I was in DC with OCA in October, and basically we were told that the reason why SAFE didn't pass at that point was because of the impeachment. Have you noticed now that that process is over, that there seems to be some more movement on the Republican banking side of things? And the second question was, the other thing that they complained about with MORAC is the expungement, and just how would you even begin to effect that through the Justice Department? Do you have a sense of what's going on with those two issues?
Well, so as far as safe banking, I mean, that's one interpretation of why it's not moving, is it's the impeachment. Others would say that there's other priorities that the Senate's looking at.
Because they passed so many bills.
Right, they passed so many bills. But it's really, I mean, it's the impeachment, they see it as just, okay, well, it's us against them. And it is very difficult to move any legislation. I think the key to it is being allowed to allow the Republicans to put their fingerprints on it and their mark on it, and in their mind maybe water it down. But as long as we don't have the 2% cap, it's going to be fine.
Treasury Secretary Mnuchin have anything to do with that?
I mean, he supports the. He's been publicly supportive of the concept.
To do something.
Yeah, and then in terms of after the impeachment, has it been any different? I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I think it's all. Yeah, at the time, the Senate actually wasn't allowed to take up any issue. So yes, there's going to be more movement after, but only because they weren't actually allowed to even talk about any other issues during that period. And then your other question
about the MORE Act and the expungement part.
Like, yeah, it's the MORE Act. I mean, so right now you've got various versions of marijuana bills. None of them are going to become law. I'll tell you that. MORE Act is not going to become law. The States Act is also not going to become law. It's going to be a compromise bill. The States Act is a bill that doesn't address any of the social equity issues, and it's kind of tailored for Republicans. Probably has the most legs in the Senate, but DOA on the House. The MORE Act goes really far into the automatic expungements and all of these things that probably the people in this room think are great, but are hard to sell to the heartland Republicans and southern Republicans that are the majority in the Senate. And so, that's why our approach has really been we support all of the legislation that's out there, with the exception of, I think there's only one quote-unquote favorable marijuana bill we oppose, and it's because it's a rescheduling bill. Rescheduling is bad for the industry. But we support all of those bills with caveats. And, because at the end of the day, none of them are going to pass out none of those are going to make it to the president's desk this year, period. And whatever does make it to the president's desk isn't going to look like any of those. It's going to be a compromise bill. So I think it's our job to really use the momentum from things like, from this legislation to keep the conversation going, and then talk about, how we can improve these bills and get start moving the dial with the middle and right, especially on the Senate side. Very important. So not only, this is the first of 8 of these Cannabis Caucus events that we're doing this month, and then we've got Lobby Days, and then we have the Cannabis Business Summit. We have sponsorships available for just about all of those. So please, if you're interested in supporting our work and also getting your brand in front of our membership at the same time, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at the cannabisindustry.org sponsorships. You can download the deck, talk to Kaliko or I, or Brian, and we can get you connected that way. I think NCIA is what's beautiful about the organization in some ways is that we are there to help your business, but not just your business, also the whole industry. And so through our sponsorships and through our digital marketing opportunities, we can fund that important work in DC, but at the same time providing you unparalleled coverage and marketing to our network. All right. And this is also another really exciting. I'm a little nervous even announcing this, but you put this in here. But I'm nervous announcing it because we're in the early stages of it. But in June, we're going to be launching our NCIA mobile app, which will be named shortly. And this will be an opportunity for members, of course, to log in. You could use the same login that you use with our site to register for our events and other things, to access everything you can access on the back end of our site as a member through the mobile app. But also, we'll have a place for cannabis industry news through NCIA news or partner news, and this will be for everybody, member or not. A members-only forum, which is rolling out in conjunction with the app, which will be an opportunity for members to speak with each other through direct messages, or speak public or discuss topics of interest publicly on the site. On the app and on the site, and also is going to have a map of our member businesses. So if you're a retailer or if for members that want to be on the map anyway, if you're a retailer, you actually have an opportunity to put yourself on the map so that cannabis enthusiasts who support our work download this and can see which businesses actually support the political efforts taking place to advance the industry. So keep an eye out for that. We're going to be launching that at our Cannabis Business Summit and beyond. Thank you guys so very much. I appreciate each and every one of you for being here, for your support, and for what you're doing to drive the industry forward. And thank you.